What is the idea?
All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our new live stream. We are working from the book from Margaret Laird, What is the Idea? It's called The Principle of Existence is Mind. Accepting the premise that the principle of existence is mind, it naturally follows that the whole universe, the whole objective universe, functions as conscious experience, commonly called God and man. Conscious experience unfolding the infinity of good, capital G, is literally what we see, hear, and feel. Soul is a much better term for conscious experience than the term God. Soul is not remote. It's a word for what we think with, feel with, enjoy with, love with. When soul is accepted as the only intelligence, we shall depend on this ever-present truth to control its own body. That's taken from the first edition of Science and Health on page 39. Soul is the individuality, the I, that is pure spirit. It's the sensing, the perception that is the existence of all things. Soul is the rationalizing principle that is life, disclosing a universe of timeless, spaceless mind forms. Soul, perception or intuition, functions as self-verification. Mind, disclosing itself as individual conscious being, is the soul or perception that is reception, perceiver and perceived. It is pure being functioning as conscious experience. Within the framework of perception, of soul, the individual I that is spirit dwells the whole being. This divinity of you, this soul as ceaseless identity, fathers your impulses and your instincts, which are always leading you in the path of self-discovery. And that last bit was taken from Margaret Laird's What is the Idea on pages 47 and 48.
Yeah.
Welcome, Betty. How are you today?
Fine, thanks.
Anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, it's that whole statement that Margaret makes about who we are, what constitutes our individual being.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of words that actually are very important to stay with. She's pointing out that though we think Betty's doing something or Kim's doing something or Jim and Henry and all these other individuals are doing something, what she's saying is that may be the way it looks, but this is the way it is. It's actually God being. And this is the way we see it right now. Everything is that. Nothing is personal achievement.
Right.
That's what she's saying.
Yep. Very good. All right. So from What is the Idea on page 48, Margaret Laird wrote, each individual conscious experience of being is the whole being functioning.
Yeah. Mrs. Eddy says the entire being is found in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not personal.
Right.
This is language saying all is well. Mm-hmm. Whether we agree with it or not, we have a view of what we think those words mean.
Mm-hmm.
And letting go of that in order to, for a moment anyway, be present to what she's actually saying is a real eye-opener.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mind is the substance or spirit that constitutes each individual conscious identity.
Yeah.
So it's what constitutes everything that exists or seems to exist. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we live and move and have being mentally and always have.
Mm-hmm.
But we scarcely ever acknowledge that.
Right.
to ourselves, let alone anywhere, any other way.
Right. And when we don't, when we skip that piece, what does that say about self-responsibility?
It means you're asleep at the wheel
Okay. All right. Cool.
and shouldn't be surprised if it's not pleasant.
All right. Yeah, because the wake-up call could be pretty swift.
That's right.
Okay. All right. In Science and Health on page 477, starting on line 26, Mary Baker Eddy wrote, "Man is the expression of soul."
Yeah. It's like the action of the God idea.
Mm-hmm.
Man is the expression of soul present,
Mm-hmm.
of soul existing.
Right. Yeah, and I'll go back to what Margaret wrote in What is the Idea? When she said soul is a much better term for conscious experience than is the term God.
Yep.
And what she went on to say about that is soul isn't remote. It's a word for what we think with, feel with, enjoy with, and love with.
Yep.
So if we take that and kind of look at that, then soul is really the expression. Because you can say if it's what we feel with, it's what we think with, it's what we, you know what I mean? It just gives you a whole flavor.
Yeah. There's a different word that I would use rather than what we feel with. It's like soul presencing looks like man doing something,
Yeah, okay.
but man is the expression of soul's being.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And in your book, Mind is the Athlete, on page 40, you wrote, "Whenever the view can be given up, the reality is much clearer and manifests in fairer form since perception is reception."
Yeah.
So when you say given up, if I can give up the view, is that my point of view or my judgment about what I am observing or what I'm experiencing? Is that the view you're talking about giving up?
View is language.
Right.
The view is the way you're seeing things around you. The
Okay.
world I walk through,
All right.
the grocery store, the house, the children, dinner on the table, all of that. That's the view. That's
Right.
the way it looks,
Right.
called living.
Right.
And we think that it is an occurrence that's personal.
Okay.
And science says no. One thing going on is soul present, self-expressing, and this is the way it looks.
Right. So when it says whenever the view can be given up, is that me letting it alone? It's giving up my judgment, my opinion. Sorry, go ahead.
Living it accurately. The view, oh, that's just the way divine perfection looks. I can look at it differently any second that I snap my finger and say, what else could it look like? And what else? And what else? And what else? And who decides how I'm going to live it?
Right.
It's all right here. Who am I being that I think that could help me or hurt me?
Right.
Or make no difference at all.
Okay.
It's all divine being and it's never personal.
Right. And so whenever the view can be given up, reality is much clearer.
Yeah, because reality is what's present.
Right. So as soon as we drop, go ahead.
The view is just my perception of it at the moment. And that changes all the time.
Right.
So I can't count.
So as long as I don't attach to anything.
Right. You can't be attached to it. You're generating. Margaret says, how can you complain with what you're making up all the time?
Right. Okay. All right. Very good. And if anyone has any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments so we can go ahead and get them addressed as well. Okay.
Yep.
Now, in What is the Idea on page 48, Margaret Laird wrote, "Without mind for his life, the human being has no life."
That's right.
Because there'd be no source.
yeah, there'd be nothing going on.
Right.
If all is infinite mind, without mind, you got nothing going on.
Right.
Without intelligence functioning, there's no world action.
Yeah.
There's a universal power and presence that we name however we name it.
Right. Okay.
But it isn't human, it isn't personal. It's divine being, the way I see it each moment, one moment at a time.
Right. With only a belief of life, he cannot help but view his experience of life as death, loss, and lack.
Yep.
So when you buy the picture, essentially, that's what you get.
Yeah, if you're living with beliefs rather than facts, it's like, I don't know, I think of shooting fish in a barrel.
Mm-hmm.
You've got nothing going on.
Right.
No chance of missing the mark, of squandering yourself in language.
Right.
Anytime I live myself as if the view of human living were the meaning of my life, I've missed the boat.
Yeah.
So only once in a while do we really stop missing the boat.
Right.
Because only once in a while do we ever say, oh yeah, this is what is going on.
Right.
Most of the time we go right along with the language picture and oh dear, or else isn't it great? Or else, oh, I don't know what to do with that.
Right.
As if language were running the show.
Right. Yeah.
It can't run the show without you.
Correct. All right. And on Science and Health on page 477, starting on line 29, Mary Baker Eddy wrote, separated from man who expresses soul, spirit would be a non-entity.
Yeah. So you can't separate spirit from man because the action of spirit is man. Man is the action of the God idea. God being is man present.
Okay. Because that's what constitutes man.
Yeah, that is it. That's right.
Okay. All right. Whatever we undertake has the potential of.
Did you skip the note?
There wasn't a note.
Separated from man who expresses soul, spirit would be a non-entity.
Yeah.
Note, there can be no such division, for man is coexistent with God, inseparable.
Right. Yes, I missed it.
Sorry. That's why you have me along.
Right. So let's see here. Hang on a minute. There it is.
40.
There's the more discussion. There can be no such division, for man is coexistent with God.
Yeah, and coexistent means inseparable.
Right. Right. Okay. Excellent. All right. And that's from there. And then in Mind as the Athlete on page 40, you wrote, whatever we undertake has the potential of fulfillment out of the ability of the self to go beyond the appearance of things.
Yeah. And the thing that enables you to go beyond the appearance of things is acknowledgement. Acknowledgement of spiritual facts. Interestingly enough, we think that the personal belief of ourselves is acknowledging something. It's not possible. The only thing that can acknowledge God is God.
Yeah.
Man is the expression of God's being. So there is no man presence without God being.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm just watching the cat walk behind you. Anyways. All right. So now, and what is the idea on page 49? Margaret Laird wrote, we may say that only good, capital G, is, but if that saying is not understood as good itself functioning, we might better
Save our breath.
save our breath.
You want to read it again?
Yeah, we may say that, and I don't have that other part. We may say that only good is, but if that saying is not understood as good itself functioning, we might say better save our breath.
Yep. Why say only good is if we don't recognize that that's the functioning presence looking like us doing whatever we're doing?
So it's all good.
Yeah, if we don't see that, then it's a language fiction.
Right.
Seeing that fact of our presence constitutes what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's all divine. And we see it the way we see it.
Right.
That doesn't change the fact of it, regardless of how we see it.
Right. Okay. We are aware that we have this unconscious belief in evil when we call some things right and others wrong. Or
Yeah,
some things,
really
isn't that
important.
great? And other things, it shouldn't have happened like that.
Yeah. If it shouldn't have, it wouldn't have.
Right. But we argue with it. Like, I'm going to take my toys and go home if I can't have it the way I want it.
And the thing is, you may take your toys and go home. You are having it the way you want it.
Right.
Because you're the only power and presence in your life.
There you go. Correct. In Science and Health on page 479, starting on line 21, Mary Baker Eddy wrote, in the vast forever, in the science and truth of being, the only facts are spirit.
Yep.
Anything more you want to say about that?
No, all the facts are spirit.
Mm-hmm.
All the facts are God being.
Mm-hmm.
All the facts are divine.
Mm-hmm.
And man is the fact of God's presence.
Right.
You know, what is it that Shakespeare said? The divinity shapes our ends.
Right.
Yeah, it's always a fact present.
Right.
You know, I may go along and indulge myself in the fantasy that Betty does something or likes something or doesn't like something or can or can't or will or won't, etc. But, you know, if I want to play that game with myself, fine, but it doesn't make it so.
Mm-hmm.
What's so is there is a divine presence, an acknowledgement of reality present. And I see it looking just like this.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I can allow it to be, the more accurate the picture will be to my good, my well-being.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. And in your book on Mind is the Athlete, on page 45, whenever the human ego image is lost to thought and divine being is your aware presence, the seen, heard, and felt offer no complaints.
Yeah.
So when you don't have your attention on yourself as a two-legged animal,
Yep.
and instead, divine being is your aware presence.
Yep.
The seen, heard, and felt offer no complaints. Because you're not in an argument. You're not in an argument with them at that point. You're clear.
Yes, and you're allowing the language to be the language.
Right.
You don't care what it looks like.
Right.
Because that's not important. The important fact is that it's all divine.
Right.
What's present is reality functioning.
Exactly.
And the less fuss I make in the language picture,
Yep.
the simpler my life is.
Yes.
And the more fulfilling it is, the richer, abundant, and so on.
Yes.
Good.
Okay. And quoting from the Bible, Matthew 6, if therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light.
Yeah. And that's the important statement. The singleness of eye. Now, the Bible spells it EYE. I just use I.
Mm-hmm.
One thing going on. All is infinite mind, infinitely manifest.
Yep.
Mary Baker Eddy said it well.
Yep. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to say about principle of existence is mind? Anything that you want to add or illuminate?
Not unless you have a question.
There's no questions here.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, you guys. We'll be back next week, and we'll see you then. Until then, be the eye. Huh?
Yeah, live consciously.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk to you soon.